There is a country in Africa that almost nobody has heard of. To understand why it exists, we must first go back 140 years to the Horn of Africa, a region then referred to as Somaliland. In 1884, the UK signed agreements with clans in northern Somaliland to establish a protectorate over the region. However, British interest in the region was minimal, and as a result, they mostly stuck to the coast to secure meat supplies for their military outpost in Aden. Then, 5 years later, in 1889, along eastern Somaliland, Sultan Yusuf Ali Kennadid signed a treaty with Italy to make his Sultanate of Hobyo an Italian protectorate. A year later, Kennadid's rival Osman Mahamoud of the Majeerteen Sultanate, along with the Galeti Sultanate, signed similar agreements with Italy, establishing the Protectorate of Italian Somaliland. Over the following decades, while British Somaliland remained mostly undisturbed, Italian Somaliland underwent a massive transformation. In 1908, the southern part of Italian Somaliland was turned into an official crown colony. Then, as fascism rose in Italy during the 1920s and 30s, Italy took direct control over the region, and tens of thousands of Italian immigrants moved in, who built farms, hospitals, schools, roads, railways, and cathedrals. Then, World War II broke out. During the war, Italian Somaliland was captured by the British, and for 9 years, Italian Somaliland remained under British military control until 1950, when the United Nations granted Italy trusteeship over the region. However, around this time, a series of independence movements began sweeping across the continent. In Mogadishu, Somalia's first political party, the Somali Youth League, quickly rose to power and began pushing for self-rule. Then, on June 26, 1960, British Somaliland gained independence. 5 days later, Italian Somaliland gained independence, and on July 1, 1960, the two countries voluntarily merged together to form the new Somali Republic. However, the territory's different histories, economies, and cultures soon presented a major divide. Throughout the early 1960s, referendums that had won a majority in the South began being rejected by northern territories. And in December 1961, when northern paramilitary organizations were placed under Southern command, they revolted. The North's second largest political party began openly advocating for secession. By the late 1960s, Somalia's political unity was crumbling. Then, on October 15, 1969, Somali President Abdirashid Ali Shermarke was assassinated. His death was quickly followed by a military coup d'etat, which placed Major General Mohamed Siad Barre in power. Over the next decade, the Barre regime became increasingly authoritarian, and in 1977, it invaded the Ethiopian region of Ogaden before suffering a humiliating defeat as Soviet-backed Cuban forces forced Somali troops out. This retreat forced the Western Somali Liberation Front into northern Somalia, where under the support of the Barre government, they antagonized, looted, and attacked local civilians of the Isaac ethnic group. Outraged by this abuse, in 1981, Somali expats in Saudi Arabia and the UK formed the Somali National Movement, or SNM, an organization calling for the overthrow of the Barre regime and the establishment of a just and democratic system. A year later, the SNM relocated its headquarters to Ethiopia, where it united with Isaac army officers and fighters to form the nucleus of the movement's armed branch. From here, the SNM launched a guerrilla war against the Barre regime, and over the next decade, completed numerous hit-and-run and rescue operations. Then, in May 1988, the SNM attacked and captured the city of Burao. And on May 31st, they began an attack on Hargeisa, the second largest city in the country. The city's Isaac population, which welcomed the SNM incursion, began being arrested and killed by government forces. And on the third day of fighting, the government began shelling and bombing the city's residents. By the time fighting stopped, up to 90% of Hargeisa was destroyed, causing hundreds of thousands of Isaac civilians to flee across the border. The cities were soon recaptured by Somali forces. While the attack was unsuccessful and claimed the lives of nearly half of all SNM fighters, the cruelty of the Barre regime united the Isaac people behind the SNM, and volunteers began flooding in. By June 1989, the SNM was again actively mounting attacks across the northwest. In response, the Barre regime began a mass genocidal campaign against the Isaac people. Between 1987 and 1989, an estimated 200,000 members of the Isaac tribe were massacred. Fortunately, by early 1991, the SNM had taken control over the vast majority of northwest Somalia and began peace talks with northern clans. Meanwhile, in southern Somalia, another rebel organization called the United Somali Congress was closing around Mogadishu, and on January 26, 1991, the Barre regime collapsed, with Barre fleeing from Mogadishu to Kenya in a tank. This collapse left behind a power vacuum, and soon opposition groups began competing for influence. Meanwhile, in the north, the SNC and northern clans had come to an agreement, and on May 18, 1991, they declared independence from the rest of Somalia as the new Republic of Somaliland. Before we discuss modern-day Somaliland, let me introduce today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark is a virtual private network, or VPN, that encrypts the information sent between your device and the internet, keeping you safe from hackers and identity theft. This is especially important when using unsecured public Wi-Fi, which leaves your information vulnerable to being intercepted. In addition, Surfshark allows you to change your virtual location to anywhere in the world, bypassing censorship and giving you access to content only available in other countries. I also love Surfshark's Clean Web feature, which allows you to block ads, trackers, and malware while surfing the web. But maybe best of all, you can use one Surfshark account on an unlimited number of devices. To download Surfshark and receive 3 months for free, click the link in the description and use my code TECHNOLOGY at checkout. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Thank you, Surfshark, and now back to the video. Since declaring independence in 1991, Somaliland has rebuilt itself and now operates as its own sovereign state, with a democratically elected government. As of 2022, the country covers an area of 177,000 square kilometers, an area slightly larger than England and Wales. It has a quickly growing population of around 5.7 million people, slightly less than Denmark. Its economy, which is almost entirely reliant on livestock, agriculture, and fishing, has a GDP of $2.6 billion. The country has hundreds of schools, with more than 200,000 primary and secondary students, along with 7 public and 35 private universities. Somaliland's official religion is Islam, its official language is Somali, and it has its own constitution, flag, currency, passports, and national anthem. As a unitary state and presidential republic, Somaliland has a president, vice president, council of ministers, and a parliament, consisting of a House of Elders and House of Representatives. The president is voted in by the people and can serve a maximum of 2 5-year terms, whereas members of parliament are elected by local communities and people and serve for 5 and 6-year terms. In essence, the government is designed as a power-sharing coalition of Somaliland's main clans, with 3 political parties: the Peace, Unity, and Development Party, the Justice and Welfare Party, and the Somaliland National Party. And, while far from perfect, Somaliland's democracy serves as a light of freedom and stability in a region racked by internal conflict and largely devoid of political rights and civil liberties. It is also its own country in pretty much every way. Despite this, it is not internationally recognized, for a host of reasons. Many countries have economic and political ties with Somalia that they aren't willing to sacrifice, and many fear that recognizing Somaliland would lead to other secessionist movements across Africa. And for countries like the US and many EU countries who are trying to stabilize Somalia, recognizing Somaliland would only complicate the situation. As a result, no country in the world has formally recognized Somaliland. Despite this, Somaliland has international relations with several countries, including Kenya, Ethiopia, Turkey, the UAE, Taiwan, and the UK, many of which have consulates or representatives' offices in the country. Despite its lack of international acceptance, Somaliland is working hard to grow its economy and ultimately gain recognition. The country has high potential for both onshore and offshore oil and gas reserves, as well as metallic minerals such as gold, copper, iron, tin, and lead. It also has large known deposits of industrial minerals such as gypsum and feldspar, as well as decorative stones such as jade and quartz. Somaliland is working to attract international investors to mine and export these resources, as well as to establish manufacturing plants. To do this, it is working on improving its road and energy infrastructure. In addition, Somaliland is situated right along one of the world's busiest shipping routes. It is trying to capitalize on this to become a global trade hub, linking inland Africa to the rest of the world. In 2016, it signed a $442 million deal with Dubai-based ports manager DP World to establish a regional trade and logistics hub at the port of Berbera to help accomplish this goal. Lastly, Somaliland is rich in natural and prehistoric attractions that it hopes will attract tourism. As a country that has risen from the ashes of war and genocide to create a stable, peaceful, and democratic system, Somaliland is truly inspirational. If you enjoyed this video, it would be amazing if you like and subscribe to Futurology for more videos on the megaproject space, technology, and trends shaping our future. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.